Thank you for coming. Baking Steel Studio here. We have a special guest, Ali Stafford and Alexandra.
You can call me
So
Ali.
privileged, so grateful to have you here today with us. This is amazing. And if you guys haven't seen this yet, her book, Pizza Night, just came out last week. It's unbelievable.
So I thought today we could make the Neapolitan-ish pizza dough recipe from my book. I have it risen so you can see it. We don't have to go through all the steps, but just mixing and then what it looks like after it's been rising for 10 to 12 hours. This has actually been over 12 hours at this point, but it's very forgiving. And then I have ingredients measured to make 2 pizzas, one from Pizza Night and one from it's on my Pizza Every Friday newsletter. So if you don't have Pizza Night, you can at least make this recipe.
Amazing.
Okay, so I guess I'll just quickly explain. This is a really simple dough: flour, salt, instant yeast, and water. It's about 77% hydration. I'm sure many of you are very knowledgeable about hydration, but that just means that that's about the water percentage relative to the flour. So relatively high hydration for a Neapolitan-style pizza dough. Very classic traditional Neapolitan-style pizza dough is more like 52% to 65% on the low end. And that's because it's baked at 900 degrees for 60 to 90 seconds. In a home oven where the temperature is much lower, 550 at the very most, you have to have a higher hydration dough so that your dough doesn't completely dry out. So that's why this is a higher hydration dough. That's it. Otherwise, the process is very similar to classic Neapolitan-style pizza dough. I recommend using bread flour or all-purpose flour for your home oven. Lots of people love 00 flour, which is beautiful. 00 flour doesn't brown as well as something like, well, at least King Arthur bread flour and all-purpose flour, which contains a little bit of malt, which helps with browning. Just one of the biggest challenges of baking in a home oven is browning and your oven not getting hot enough. So yeah, baking steel. I've been singing the praises of the baking steel for years, but it really will be your best friend for getting good browning in your oven and using like something more like bread flour as opposed to 00 flour. You absolutely can use 00 flour if you like it. It's a great flour. It's flavorful. It will have a nice texture. It just probably won't brown as well. That's all. And it will make for a wetter dough. So with this recipe, you may need to use just a smaller amount of water. That's really the only changes that you'll need to make. So, and can you see everything? Yes? See everything. Okay, great. So I measured everything ahead of time. This is 550 grams of flour. That's roughly 4 1/4 cups. I highly recommend using a scale so that you ensure you are measuring accurately. 15 grams of salt. It seems like a lot, and I feel like I sound like a broken record now because I keep saying this in all the sort of demos I've done, but with pizza dough and bread dough, you want to use roughly 2 to 3%. The weight of the flour is how much salt you should use. So for this recipe, that would be something like 12 to 16 grams of salt. It really won't make your dough taste too salty. It seems like a lot, but it's important for a number of reasons in addition to flavor: controlling fermentation and strengthening gluten. So 15 grams of salt, a half teaspoon or 2 grams of instant yeast. This is the yeast I love. It's SAF instant yeast. It comes in these vacuum sealed bricks. Once you open it up, you can transfer it to a quart container like this. It will keep in your freezer or fridge or freezer either for over a year. Whisk this all together. And then 425 grams of cold water, just room temperature water. This has been sitting out. And the reason I'm not doing warm water is just because we want this dough to rise slowly. And it's also just easier to not have to worry about having your water at a specific temperature. You just can use cold water and it will be fine. So this dough is going to rise for, it really depends. This is the thing, we're getting into summer. So even with this half teaspoon of yeast, you may find in the middle of the summer, your dough will double in 6 hours. In winter, it'll be more like 12 hours. So it really depends on the time of year, the temperature of your kitchen. But just know that it's very, very forgiving. It can go more or less time. Now, sourdough is a little bit of another story. There are sourdough variations in the book, and sourdough, you really do have to monitor more closely. When sourdough over ferments, you really can't do much to salvage the dough after that, except make crackers and other things. So sourdough is another story. And those, specific instructions for sourdough are in the book, but for a yeast leavened dough, it's very forgiving. So as you can see, this is kind of shaggy. It's like you still see some dry patches. I'm gonna let this rest I'll just let this rest until the very end of class. And then we're gonna do some stretches and folds. Just one set, that's it. And then this is gonna rise.
A few moments later.
So I just have a little container of water. I'm just gonna wet my hand and I'm just gonna pull up on the dough and stretch it. And with every turn, I'm just wetting my hand. This will keep using a wet hand, it's kind of counterintuitive, but it will actually keep prevent your hand from sticking to the dough. And this really just, you can see all those dry patches are now incorporated. It's a little bit more cohesive. This is just building a little bit of strength. In the book, I say 15 to 30 minutes after you mix the dough. Lots of wiggle room here. If you have to mix the dough and then leave for a couple of hours, come back, you can do one set of stretches and fold. I've done it even in short. Sometimes I mix this at night before bed, and then I go and brush my teeth, and I come back and I do the sets of stretches and folds just then. Really just needs a brief time to rest. But this is what the dough will look like after 10 to 12 hours. Okay. And I'm just going to divide it into 4 pieces. And you do not have to if you do not want to. I like the scale. This, by the way, this is the uni scale. This is like a micro scale. So for measuring salt and small amounts of things, it's very accurate. Okay, grams. So let's see, this is going to be too small. 221. 249. Let's see. Okay, 246. Just go with that. 246. Another 246. Oops. 7. Oops. 251. Let's just leave it and see what happens. And this is 250. Okay, so I have 2 that one's 250 or 251, 250, and 2 that are 246. A difference of 4 grams is fine. Close enough. I would say within the 245 range. So we can quickly ball these up. I find an easy way to do it is to just, pull on the outside, and just bring it all the kind of edges in, then flip it over. And at this point, it's really a balance of trying to use enough flour so that it doesn't stick, but not too much flour that it prevents you from creating tension. So you just cup your hands and drag it towards you. And just this it's slightly sticking to my hands, but not too much, but my surface, doesn't have too much flour. And once you get the hang of this, it's really fun. And it's almost hard to stop doing because you can feel the tension you're creating, and it's just, you're creating a nice ball. The bottom, you can see it's just a little bit open, but that's all you're looking for. So I took out, so basically after you portion the dough, ball it up, you're going to put them into individual containers and you're going to stick them in your fridge. You can, I find the sweet spot to be 2 to 3 days. I know Andres also has a dose very similar, 72 hours is his I think sort of sweet spot. Really good things happen in the fridge when you leave them there for a couple of days. It will help your dough. Basically what happens, this is getting scientific and science isn't my strong suit, but there are enzymes in the flour and the yeast that transform the starches in the flour into simple sugars. And those simple sugars contribute to browning and they contribute to flavor too. So that's one real strong reason for making your dough ahead of time. Once you take your dough balls from the fridge, you want to transfer them to another container to allow them to kind of just like relax a little bit at room temperature, have a little bit, when they're in their containers, they're just very confined. Transfer them to a roomier container, but you really do want to make sure it's airtight, not airtight necessarily, but just covered, but more than just a tea towel covered. If it's not like a lidded vessel, you'll see your dough balls will form like a skin over them. And then when it comes time to shape, it's really hard. I love these dough mate containers if you have space for them. If you don't have space for them, you can use like a 9x13 vessel, just coat it with a little bit of flour. You can either cover it with a sheet pan. You can, plastic wrap is great. If you hate plastic wrap, you can use like those beeswax covers or anything that will create a seal. At this point, just because rice flour doesn't burn the way all-purpose flour does, the oven, you absolutely can use all-purpose flour at this step. I just find rice flour to be nice here. You can also use a mix of rice flour and all-purpose flour. Rice flour is expensive, so you can like cut it with all-purpose flour if you prefer. They've been sitting here now. I took them out of the fridge at 10:30, so almost 2 hours. They're very light and airy. You have to be like a little bit gentle, but not too gentle. I'm just coating it in a little bit of rice flour. And if you like, you can really at this point shape them anyway. If you like a sort of a really pronounced cornicione, you can like, really push the air out. If you don't like that really pronounced cornicione, you can just kind of pat it flat a little bit. That big bubble that popped, you want that to pop in the oven. It will really just burn. So I'm just pressing out the air a little bit, and then I'm just going to stretch it. And if you've proofed your dough balls properly at room temperature before baking, this process should be very easy. As you can see, this is really opening up like really nicely. I'm not wrestling with it at all. And it actually does still feel like a little bit cold, and I probably could have done it a little bit longer, but this is fine. This is all as far as I'm going to go. I'm going to get it onto the peel. We'll top it, and then even just in the brief time of getting it to the peel, topping it, it will have relaxed a little bit more. I'm going to stretch it. I'll be able to stretch it just a little bit more to get it a little bit bigger, and then I'll get it in the oven. So I find for the home oven that these parchment paper rounds, or just parchment paper in general, are just such a lifesaver. This is a high hydration dough, so the transfer from the peel to the steel is a little bit tricky. You absolutely can just use some semolina directly on the peel, but this will really be your best friend. It also will keep your steel clean, so when little bits of ingredients, flour, things come off your pizza when it's in the oven, and then they just burn on the steel, and then they might end up on your floor. So I just kind of, for a convenience reasons, also like to use the parchment. Some people love semolina, some people don't. I like the texture. My kids like the texture, so I almost always use a little semolina, but you don't have to. Okay, and the other thing that's nice about these rounds is that they're 12 inches, and it just kind of is a nice guide. We're going to be able to stretch the dough to the edges. So this is a recipe, and this recipe is on in my newsletter, Pizza Every Friday, and I think maybe Andres will be able to send like a link afterwards with the link. So it's inspired by a Neapolitan-style pizzeria in New Haven, Connecticut called Zanelli's, which is on Worcester Street with Sally's and Pepe's. I want to say it's 3 years old at this point. Totally different style than New Haven style pizza. It's real classic Neapolitan style pizza. Can't recommend it enough. It's really, really, really delicious pizza. And this is their Genovese pizza on their menu. So it's basil pesto. And any local, I didn't make this pesto. This is, if you're local, it's Buddha pesto, and they sell it in lots of the local shops. It's really, really good. It's a local-ish brand, but it's but it's just really, really good. Okay. And then they do a big pinch of crushed red pepper flakes. So depending on your heat tolerance, but I do think like this really is nice with a little bit of a kick. This is Calabro mozzarella. It's just low moisture whole milk mozzarella. This is my favorite brand. I know you can't get it everywhere. I always encourage people to just find a brand that they like, just taste things. You can't tell from this, but it's like, it is a little bit softer, I find, than some of the other whole milk, low moisture mozzarellas out there. When I was out in California for the photo shoot, we were not using Calabro. It was some other brand, and it was wonderful. It was really delicious. So I'm not saying this is the only mozzarella you can use, but this is a one. I love the flavor. I think some low moisture whole milk mozzarellas can be very bland. I think this one is very tasty, and I really like how it melts. Okay, so at this point, we're just going to stretch it one more time. I've had my baking steel preheating for over an hour now. I like it in the top rack, and I also just always encourage people to play around with it though. Every oven is different, and not every oven, with it in the top rack will brown as well as it might in the bottom rack. Okay, so at this point, I forget, I think I do drizzle it with a little bit of olive oil. It's probably unnecessary given the pesto, but why not? A little bit of olive oil, just a pinch of sea salt. I'm using Maldon flaky sea salt here. This one doesn't need to be too salty, or extra salty, I should say, because it's going to be out of the oven. It's going to be topped with prosciutto, Parmesan, and a little bit of arugula. All right, I'm going to get this in, and while this is baking, we can get going on we can assemble the other one on the parchment paper, and then I'll just get it out of the way while it's baking, okay?
That was a beautiful pizza, Ali. Unbelievable. Love the colors and the pesto. The flavor is going to be the bomb. I can't wait to see the next one, guys.
And this is one from Pizza Night. I don't think this recipe is online yet, but I can see. This one is basically a white pizza, and out of the oven, also it's topped with a little bit of honey, some pistachios, and arugula. I was gone last week doing some events, and one of the pizzerias, Rose Pizzeria in Berkeley, made this. They made 3 of the pizzas and 3 of the salads from Pizza Night, and they added to this one pickled cherries, and it was so good. So I don't have pickled cherries on me today, but just something to keep in mind. I feel like this is a recipe that you could really play around with, especially during the summer with all the fruit that you could add to it, or pickled fruit you could add to it. So I'm really just here just using the back of my hands and trying not to pierce the dough with my fingers, and kind of just letting gravity do the work. This shouldn't be hard. You shouldn't have to wrestle. If you find yourself wrestling, let it sit for 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, and come back to it. So this is just 2 tablespoons of heavy cream, and I'm just beating it until it'll be slightly thick. You could use creme fraiche in place of the heavy cream. I love creme fraiche on pizza. I think it adds such a nice tang, and it's just such a nice white pizza base. But heavy cream is nice too. And 2 tablespoons will thicken up pretty quickly. Okay, that's good. And this pizza is it's inspired by one that was in the Emily Pizza Loves Emily cookbook. The people who run Emmy Squared and those restaurants, I love so many. One of their Detroit style pizzas is one of my favorites, and this is one inspired by one of the recipes in their book as well. So a little bit of Parmesan, and this one cooks a little bit faster than the other, so keep an eye on it. For me, the pizzas usually take 4 to 5 minutes. This one I start checking it around around 4 minutes. And this is brie. You could use camembert, really any rich kind of creamy cheese, any rich creamy cheese. Oh well. I'm gonna get this out of the way because I think the other pizza is done in sea salt. I'll come back to this in a second, and we'll stretch it, and then we'll finish the first pizza now. So here is actually, I think I can close. Is this creating a shadow? Is that better? Okay. So out of the oven here, it's 2 ounces of prosciutto. I'm gonna do this too far ahead of time because I was worried about it drying out. Can't tell, this feels very thick. Oh well, I feel like that's 2 pieces. That's good. You really just want to cover it in a layer. I'm gonna leave it at that. You could do another piece if you wanted it a little bit meatier. Just some Parmesan. This is a stiffer block of Parmesan. I like to be generous with the Parmesan. I think it's just really good. The idea. You can of course add more or less, and just some arugula. I just love finishing pizza with a little bit of arugula. It's so good. Another little bit of olive oil. Maybe just a very light pinch of salt. The prosciutto is salty enough. All right, I'll cut this and then there we go. That's creating a shadow. And then we can finish the other pizza.
That is a beautiful pie, Allie. That is stunning.
Let's see. I'll just do 2 big pieces, or sorry, 4 big pieces. See this? It's nice, just simple, so good. The crust is nice and airy. Let's see if I can get a better crumb shot. Good. I guess also people always like to see the undercarriage. I'm just gonna turn it over. All the toppings are gonna fall off, but just so you get the idea. That's all thanks to the baking steel. Can't sing its praises enough. Okay, here's the other pizza. Okay. And this one gets drizzled with a little bit of honey. I'm just gonna do this. So this is like, you know, a little trick. If you rub your measuring spoon or measuring cup with oil, the honey will kind of slide right out. So this is a tablespoon of honey. Seems like a lot, but it works. You can use more or less to taste. Some pistachios that I should have chopped ahead of time. I'm just going to give them a rough chop. It's 2 tablespoons of pistachios. And then this one is also finished with a little bit of arugula, a little bit of olive oil. Do a little bit, even a little bit more. And a pinch of sea salt. And that's it. And I'll cut it. Let me see this. So like nice cornicione, like it's like, this is like, you know, Neapolitan style dough is on the it's a wetter pizza, and lots of people don't love that like wet style of pizza, but depending on how you top it, like some of the pizzas in my book will come out more wet than others. Like a tomato sauce will be a little bit wetter. This is a little bit drier, so it's, you know, it's not sagging in the middle. That's also thanks to the baking steel. Another trick you can do, here's another trick you can do is you can par bake the dough. So you know, before topping it, stretch it into the roughly 12 inches, put it in your oven for 60 to 90 seconds,
then pull it out and top it. And that's, if you find your oven just doesn't get hot enough, you're not getting the browning, you're not liking the texture, that par bake will just really help you get like a little bit of a crisper bottom.
Okay. Anybody have questions? Go for it.
Yes.
I don't have the chat open, but I can.
And now we have a
Okay.
double screen. Perfect. Oh, they can see us both. Wow, I think we got it right finally.
Okay,
Good night,
great.
guys.
Amazing.
This book is unbelievable. Like, honestly, Allie and I have been friends for, call it 10 years. Since I probably started, you were blogging and we just met up because we were reading the same things. And I happened to have a cool product that I sent you and she liked it. I was like so pumped. I was like, oh my God, she likes the product. So, and we've been friends ever since. And we've been following each other and hanging out a little bit once in a while, like on Instagram or something. But her books are incredible and always inspired, but she does more than just pizza, guys. But she just dialed in and made this book and it's just really beautiful. And I really recommend you guys getting one.
It's alexandracooks.com. If you just Google Alexandra Cooks or Alexandra's Kitchen, either, oh, somebody is Stephanie. Thank you, Stephanie, dropping it in there. Yeah, that's, I mean, I'm on Instagram as well at Alexandra Cooks. Either a blog comment or an email is where I will definitely respond.
Same. And yeah, and don't be shy. Like sometimes if we don't get the first one, we'll get the second one too. So we can be
Yes.
persistent. That's okay. Just be kind
Yeah.
and be persistent, right?
Definitely.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we got your site. Guys, grab this book. Anything else, email us both. And Allie, anything else you want to leave us with?
No, I really do. I mean, I've been talking. So I for a week I was doing events, and really when people ask like, what's the best thing you can do at home? The first thing I would say is get a scale to measure properly. And then the second thing really is the baking scale. This sounds like an infomercial at this point, but I'm not just saying it. It's really the best tool you can invest in if you want like better pizza in your home oven.